interviewing top talent in movies, television, sports, and music, leaders, entrepreneurs, and experts. Broadcast in over 30 countries, out of New York, Manchester, Los Angeles. As a mentor, life and career coach, I help others, athletes, actors, and people of all walks of life, solve the problems they face by introducing balance and routines that would otherwise leave them stuck and overthinking, paralyzed, unable to reach their goals. They look for engaging, rewarding lives, and I think they deserve that. Today, I invite you to join me on my radio show to learn from my guests and I how you can be more resilient and strong. I empower people who struggle with confusion or feel stuck in soulless, non-fulfilling situations. I help them find calm and claim their authentic self in their career path or personal life so they can live to their fullest potential. As a motivational speaker for businesses, schools, resorts, and communities, I speak on topics of achieving success and living a mentally healthy lifestyle, featuring topics from my Power My Life program within my revolutionary Impact, Influence, and Income Academy. I inspire the world as a radio journalist, author, life coach, career coach, resilience expert, mental health advocate, and most recently as a society writer for Transatlantic Today magazine. So happy that you joined me. Let's get rolling. You don't just have to go through it, you can grow through it. So good morning and thank you for joining Resilient You. On our show, we have guests that talk about topics of resilience. And today I have someone who is a very special guest. We're going to talk about something that is a message that needs to be heard in the world today. I have Esther Collas. Esther is a woman who has a story of strength and resilience. And we're going to talk about issues that involve the legal system. We're going to talk about issues that will have people ready to stand up and get into something that's going to really help them in the long run. So, Esther, welcome to the show.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for having me.
Sure. Now, you're coming to us from New Zealand.
Yeah.
And I'm in the US, and so thanks so much. I love that we can be global in this world we have. Now, why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself?
Well, I originally from England, but I moved to New Zealand 8 years ago. I realized I was an ocean baby, and I sail, I surf, I do anything that gets me in the ocean because it's the most healing thing for me.
Love that. I love that. Now, did you in England, and I'm not familiar with how things are, but did you have a chance to visit and vacation at when you were younger, or was this something new that you discovered about yourself later in life?
What, the ocean?
The ocean,
it was definitely something I found when I moved to New Zealand. In England, the ocean was cold. and no, it's not quite the same. Not quite the same as New Zealand. So when I moved here, I'm like, oh, this is pretty. It was beautiful.
Wonderful. Well, you don't have the full accent yet, so that's something else.
No, not yet.
Right.
I don't know if I ever will. It's always going to be a little mix between the two.
Right. Well, Esther, you and I connected earlier this year at a conference, and I was really moved and touched by something that you shared, and you went through something, and we actually have some things in common. Can we talk a little bit about that?
We can.
Okay. So you had someone that you trusted who betrayed that trust.
Yeah. Yeah, to put it. Yeah. I did.
And so do you want to tell a little bit about your experience and how you went through it and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, it's been a long process. It was a friend of mine who I agreed that he could sleep in my bed, and when I woke up, he was helping himself to my body. And in that moment, I lost all of me. I think I actually hated myself for a long time. And I didn't tell anyone. I maybe mentioned it in passing to one or two people, but for 10 years, I did not tell a soul. I pushed it down. I went back to being friends with him because it was so much easier. And I know that makes no sense to some people because they assume that if someone does something like that, you'll just cut them off. And it's not always as easy as that. Like when you see this person every day in work, it's you're so afraid that people aren't going to believe you, that they're going to think you're lying. And I remember I messaged him the next day and he said, well, I thought it was what you wanted. And it was like the blame came right back to me. And for so long, I blamed myself. It was like, well, what did I do? What was it I said? What didn't I say? What did I do that made him think that? Because all of a sudden it was my fault, because it had to be my fault. Because I grew up in a world where, as the woman, it's your fault. Your skirt's too short. You drank too much. You were too flirty. You name anything you want. It is what it is. That's how you grow up. So you're taught from a young age that it's your fault. And I believed that for a long time. And I was ashamed that I went back to being friends with him, ashamed that it had happened to me. And I just pushed it down and I was like, no, I'm not this. I'm good. I'm fine. I've dealt with it. And it was only really over COVID because New Zealand shut down. Like there was nothing, couldn't work. And so all of a sudden I couldn't run anymore. There was nothing for me to do. There were not, I had 24 hours in a day. I couldn't work, couldn't go to the gym, couldn't surf, you couldn't do anything. There's only so many beach walks you can take. And then it just all hit me and the nightmares began. And then this image of that night, it was like I was reliving it and it just kept coming. And I turned into a tiny bit of an emotional wreck. I was not in a good space. But I knew I couldn't do it on my own. So I got a therapist and he helped me. He was exceptionally worried about me, but he helped me and it was all online and he kind of helped me get through it. And after like 4 or 5 months of therapy, like twice a week, going for once a week, eventually I was able to tell people. Now I write because that's always been my way of getting things across. And it's like writing sometimes it allows you to hide slightly. You can be completely honest, but no one can see you. They can hear you, but they can't see you. And it's this way that I could express myself. So I wrote a blog about what happened to me. And that was the first time most of my family found out. I gave them a pre-warning that I was going to write a blog about something unpleasant. Because the thing I found, it's like when you tell women about what happened to you, you know they're going to get it. They're going to understand it. Most, not all, but you know they're going to understand. They're gonna get it. Honestly, majority of them have probably been through something anyway. They've probably had their own experience with it. So they get it. Whereas when you have to tell the men in your life, it's terrifying. Because you think that they will think it's your fault. And so you've blamed yourself for so long, and then you're terrified that the people you love, the people you care about, are going to blame you as well. And it just becomes this, it's this huge fear. And I remember when I hit enter on that keyboard that day when I'd written the blog, I'd read it and read it and read it and read it. I hit enter. The fear that ran through my body was just, I was frozen. And every time my phone buzzed, I just, like, this shock went up my body, because I was like, I was waiting for this judgment, because I judged myself for so long. I just expected everyone else to do the same. I expected that judgment. I expected them to blame me, to shame me, to hate me, to all of the things. I expected everybody on the outside of me to feel the same way about me as I did. And they didn't. I got so much love and I got so much support, and it was really alien feeling to me. I didn't understand it. I didn't know it. I didn't get it. It was a lot. It was like, it was, I'm very good at pushing people away. Very, very good at it. I did it for a long, long time. And so people were coming close, and I'm like, no. And so I've had to get better. I'm still not great, as some of my friends will attest to, but I'm getting better at letting people in. But I did the blog, and then this blog, eventually one of his friends read it and came to me and said, is it him? No, I'd never used his name, and I never will. His name doesn't deserve to be in my mouth, so it's never going to be. But his friend came to me and said, is it him? And I was like, yes, it is. And that, in a way, shocked me, because I'd put nothing in there that could possibly say who it was. But he knew. For whatever reason, he knew. And he asked me, and I was like, yes. 6 months later, he went to him and said, I don't want you in my life. I want nothing to do with you. I was like, I don't want a man like that in my life. And he denied that I would never do anything. And then other people took my blog to him and said, well, this is why he wants nothing to do with you. And he read it, and they were like, and he was like, well, it's true, but I apologized the next day. And I think for the first time, I was so angry. I was just livid that I just wanted to shake him. I was just like, do you think it's like, I'm like, you didn't scratch my car, an apology the next day is not exactly gonna do it, especially when your apology came with, I'm sorry, but I thought it was what you wanted. I'm sorry, but it's your fault. I'm like, that's not an apology. I was livid. It took me a moment, got very angry. My friends were great. And then eventually I was one of my friends, as I was talking to him, he's like, well, are you going to go to the police? I was like, do you know what they're going to do to me if I go to the police? I was like, do you have any idea what they do to women when you go to the police? And he's like, but what if he does it to someone else? And now I'm like, I can't live with that. I couldn't live with that. So I did, and I went to the police, and then they had to arrange things, because this happened in the UK. So this happened in London. So I went to the Met Police, and then the Met Police had to arrange something in New Zealand. So the New Zealand police were the ones that interviewed me. And then they did all that. Then it went to the Crown prosecution once their case had finished. And it was like 18 months later when the Crown prosecution came and said, you know what? we're gonna press charges. We're gonna do this. And to me, I was surprised, but I'm like, obviously they've got something, they know something, because why would they press charges if they didn't think they could win this, or they didn't have something? I'm like, well, what would be the point? And so that happened in August of last year. They said they were going to press charges. November, he pled not guilty. And then end of July, start of August this year was the case in London. So not that long ago, really, a few months. And that was when that case was. And I thought pressing send on that blog was terrifying, but the fear of going into that room, and I chose to do it. I could have had curtains and blinds and so I couldn't see him, but I chose to do it without, because I'm like, nah, he gets to see me. Like, he did it, he gets to see me. And so he did it, stood in that court. It went over, my testimony went over kind of 2 days. It went over about 2 and a bit hours, but spread over 2 days. And it was the only way I can think to describe it. Like, what he did to me was one thing. I learned to deal with that. I learned to accept. I can't change it. It is what it is. Maybe I was naive, but I assumed that the court system was there to protect me. And it wasn't. It wasn't. It was there to protect him. And it did so by completely trying to destroy me. It was like this sustained attack on my character, my choices, my morals, my memory. It just kept going. And I was told by the prosecution and others that they were like, whatever you do, don't just answer the questions. Don't give any more. Just answer the questions. Simple answers. Just answer the questions. So I did. My most common answer was, you're wrong. So she, at the very end, the lawyer, the barrister, she was like, I put it to you that you are misremembering. I was like, you do not forget that. I may have pushed it away, but you do not forget. That is imprinted in your soul. You do not forget the moment someone violates you. As much as you want to, you don't. You can't. It's there. It's this part of your soul. And I was just like, you're wrong. And then she was like, well, I put it to you that you are, what's the next one? It was, I put it to you that you are exaggerating. I'm like, sure. I flew all the way across from New Zealand to exaggerate something. For what benefit? Exactly. But then the last one, she was just like, I put it to you that you are lying. And that was as if someone had taken, like a baseball bat, and she swung and she hit, and that hurt. Because 14 years earlier, I didn't tell a soul. Because I didn't think they'd believe me. And then stand in that courtroom and be called a liar. It's just that shouldn't be allowed. That shouldn't be acceptable. His only defense was my choices, my choice to go back to being friends with him, because that's what I needed to do for my safety, to keep myself sane, to keep myself
sanity,
falling into the depths of the pain that he'd caused. I had to stay friends with him. I had to pretend I was okay. that I dealt with it, that it was fine, that I could carry on with my life. I
Mm.
mean, slowly but surely that was dragging me down, and it affected every part of my life.
Now, Esther, one thing, I said we have some things in common, and I want to share something. When I was 21, I went over to my cousin's house, and my friend, who was a guy, he came with me. We were just friends. I was his sister's best friend, and he was there, and there was a few other friends there. We were going to play games and hang out, and the we were my cousin liked this one guy, and they went into the bedroom, and my friend and I were in the living room, and he jumped on the couch and he said, "I'm taking the couch." So I was left with the floor. So I was like, okay, fine, whatever. It's late. I'll just sleep on the floor. And I woke up, and my cousin's boyfriend was having his way with me. I got up. I realized what's going on after being sound asleep. I push him off, and I didn't want to disturb the house. Here I am thinking I don't want to disturb the household. I don't want to. So I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "You want this." And I said, "No, I don't want this." And I got in his face and I said, "This never happened. Get out of here." And I pushed him, and he went back into the bedroom. I was, I didn't know, I was in shock. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't understand what had just happened. My friend woke up and he said, "What's going on? What?" I said, "Let's go." And so we got in the car and we left. My cousin calls me the next day and she says, "What happened? Why did you leave?" He didn't say anything. Well, I said, "You know what? I'm coming back. I want to talk to you." I went back and I talked to her. I told her what had happened. She tells me that I'm a liar. She tells me that if it happened, it's because I wanted it to happen. I called the police. He went downstairs, hid in a clothes dryer. The police came and got him. Meanwhile, I think, okay, that's great. They got him. He's arrested. Everything will be fine until the prosecutor comes to knock on my door a couple of weeks later. They persuaded me to go to court because they said he was going to do this again. There were some complaints about him, but nobody ever did anything. So here I am. I'm going to ruin my relationship with my cousin. My friend was asleep on the couch. He wasn't a witness to it, but it happened. I, just like you, went into that courtroom unaware of what was going to happen. I am with you in that courtroom. They tested my character, my memory, my choices. They ripped me apart, and I did my best just to tell the truth, what happened, and they found him not guilty because I said to him, "This did not happen." It was my choice of words that I said to preserve myself in feeling okay after just being violated. And he did not go to jail. He later did go to jail. He violated a minor, and he went to jail, and he died in that jail. My cousin and I, we still don't speak to this day. My friend feels such guilt because he didn't know it. He wasn't awake. He wished he could have done something. So when I heard your story, And then the court thing, I said, this is a message that has to be shared. There's, as you said, women have things happen to them, and because of the culture, because of the way that the generations and the way that men are taught, we don't have that courage. We don't have that place in ourselves to stand up for ourselves and to fight for what is right. So, Esther, I commend you for coming forward today and sharing this story. And I know that after that, you were so shaken up, and it took another round of time and self-healing to help yourself, right? So I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to steal your thunder or, get you, take away from your experience or your story, but I just have to share this because I was there. It's amazing, isn't it? This is just so when you said that you had to go through dealing with that fear again and questioning yourself and second guessing your choices in terms of going forward with this, it's probably because you sat with it so long. You tried to heal and tried to be okay with it, but it wasn't okay. And I hope that today you're here to say that you want to stand for others and you want to make a change to the legal system.
I do, because I think when the conference I met you in, it was about speaking up. And for me, it was like, well, if I share the story about what happened to me, because this was before the trial. And I felt very much, okay, well, if I share this story about what happened to me, because when I've shared it on blogs and things, people have come forward and they've said, you've made me want to share my story. You've made me I've spoken up about it for the first time, which was an amazing thing, because if it helps anyone, if sharing my story helps someone, then it's worth doing. And I was like, I'm going to do this, and then maybe I can figure a way to coach some people, coach some women, help them through it. And then after the trial, what I realized was, I don't want that. It's all well and good. I can share my story. I can tell people what happened to me. But the reality is, that's not going to change anything. It might change something for a person. It might help them speak out. But if they decide to go to the court, and honestly, you could take any legal system in the world. It doesn't have to be the English one. It doesn't have to be the American. It doesn't have to be Australian, New Zealand. It does not matter which legal system it is. If it's a case of sexual assault, as soon as you, as the victim, walk into that room, you are the criminal. You are on trial. Your choices are on trial. Your actions are on trial. And they will talk about your actions preceding the event. They will talk about your actions post the event. They will talk about anything that you have done that makes this your fault. Whereas innocent until proven guilty, you don't have that same luxury. You are guilty the moment you step in. You are guilty of being a woman. You are guilty of drinking. You are guilty of flirting. You are guilty of wearing a skirt. You are guilty of going back to being friends with him. You are guilty for saying one statement. You are guilty. Everything you do, you are guilty. And it's like, why? Why is this on me? I chose to go to sleep. That was my only choice I made that night. I didn't choose for him to help himself to my body as I slept. That was his choice.
Yeah.
And why is it not only about that night? If he robbed my house, it would be about that night and that night only. So why, because he helped himself to my body, does it get to be about every choice I've ever made in life? Why does that happen? It wouldn't happen in any other kind of case. So why does it in sexual assault? Why am I guilty for existing as a fucking woman.
Yeah.
It's just, and it's not a men versus women thing. Like, it's not that. I have some incredible male friends that would never in a heartbeat dream of doing what was done to me.
Mm.
But we all grew up in the same system that taught me it was my fault, taught him that if he wants it, he's entitled to it.
Mm.
It's the same. We grew up in the same way, in the same system. And yes, you'll have family things that will influence you in a way, but it's the same system. You're taught the same thing. Girls are taught in school that you can't wear strappy tops or skirts shorter than a certain level because it's distracting for the boys. In that instant, the boys are taught that they have no self-control, and the girls are taught that they are responsible for the boys' actions. And it's like that's taught from such a young age that it becomes so ingrained. And then we wonder why crap like this happens. And then for me, I'm like, what's the point of me talking and speaking and getting it out there and saying, this happened to me, please speak up, you'll feel better. And then them getting as far as a court system, if they're lucky, it'll go to court. In the UK, 1% of these cases goes to court. So I was the lucky 1%. And I went to court. But then I'm like, what's the point? Like, if getting them to do that and then getting them to go to a courtroom where they are where basically the system allows you to be re-traumatized over a longer sustained period of time. I mean, I wouldn't wish that on anybody, but at the same time, I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Because I used my voice. I spoke up for myself. Yes, he was found not guilty. And yet he put his faith in the system because he knew the system was there to protect him. It wasn't there to protect me, it was there to protect him. And he put his faith in that. And it makes him a coward for not admitting it when he knows exactly what he did. But he has to live with that now, not me. But going to court, the one thing it didn't help me do is that shame and that blame that I'd carried for so long. It allowed me to give it back to him because that was never mine. That shame was never mine to carry. That was his. I should not have been ashamed of his actions. He should be ashamed of his actions. And the court system should be ashamed of the way they treat sexual assault victims on the stand.
Yeah.
Not me. That's on them. That's not on me.
It's true. You're right. You're right. And it's so I'm pleased that after going through that, you did find some relief and found something to anchor yourself, because you have a lot to offer the world and you have so much vindication that is yours. And so anybody, if you're listening to this, you're watching this, if you've been crossed, if someone has crossed the line and taken advantage of you, stand up for yourself. The world is changing. We're lucky to be alive in a time such as this. You know, the other day there was a younger person and they were saying, why is it that boys don't have to wear their shirts in the summertime? Why is it that they can go topless and we have to cover ourselves up? So your point is coming through. I think the younger generations are really beginning to see things differently with all the social media, with everything that they're exposed to now. It's really expanding. In fact, there was even a prosecutor that was on the news this morning saying about transparency and how they're required to be transparent. So I'm hoping that all of these changes are going to make its way into the legal system. I know that lawyers will do whatever they can do to try to prove the other party guilty and give their client innocence. And you know, it's in our situations where these people were let free to go, and to think that what they did was right, it's just really, I just can't. I don't know. I haven't really seen people who were going through this kind of thing lately, and maybe I'm just not exposed to those things. Maybe it's still happening. But if you have a chance, Esther, what do you think is going to be your next steps? Do you have any plans to maybe go to law school or to do
God, no.
anything?
I'm not going to law school. I do not want to become a lawyer. No, thank you. No interest whatsoever in becoming a lawyer and making that my life. But I don't know what my next step is, if I'm honest. This is still a very new journey. It's fresh. It's still 3 months. I'm still healing. Right. Yesterday was a really bad day for me. I woke up, and I think because I tried to kid myself into the fact that I was great, I was fine, I was over it, I was over the case, I was over the way I was treated, I was over it, I was fine. And I'd been trying to fool myself into believing that. And it was only when I was visiting with a friend, and he pointed out that every single conversation I had, whether it was positive, whether it was negative, whether it was about meatballs, it didn't matter. They all came back to that case. Everything, every topic I brought back. And it was in that brutally honest conversation that I realized I was not over it. I was not through it. And it's okay that it's going to take time. It's a journey. It's a healing journey. And I'm going to have days that really, really suck. I'm going to have days that are hard. But what I've been guilty of doing previously is, if I have a hard day, I will curl up on the sofa. I will just not deal with life. I will switch off from life and just sit in the victimhood of feeling guilty. And yesterday I really wanted to do that, but I was like, no. So I went to my friend's house, and I was so tempted to phone her and cancel, but I was like, no. So I went to her house, and we had just sat down, had coffee, chatted. Then I went to the beach, and I just walked along the beach, and it just felt so good to just have the sun on my face and the ocean just lapping at my feet. And then I rang a friend of mine who'd been calling me for months, and I'd been ignoring because I was pushing him away because I couldn't deal, because I knew he sees me, and it was just like I don't think I was ready for that. So, but I rang him and had a very honest conversation when he asked how I was, and he was like, I knew you were ignoring me, but I knew I'd just keep calling, and one day you were going to call me back or you'd answer your phone. He goes, but he's like, I know what you're going through. So he's like, I knew you would. And I did. I called and I was honest about the fact that yesterday I was hurting. It was a hard day, and it was like that realization that I was still in it. I'm still in it. But it's okay. I'm kind of gonna give myself the grace to not be okay. But I'm not gonna try and hide from the world. I'm gonna go out and do things that bring me joy, that help me to feel better, because I don't want to make my life about the past. And what I'd want to do is find that balance where, yes, I have no idea how I'm going to do it, but I do want to go and make a change in that system, so that when victims do go on and stand on that stand, that it's about the night in question. It is not about their choices and their character, and that the defense cannot use the victim's choices as his only defense. That was his only defense, was my choices. His defense was all about me and what I did or didn't do. It was nothing else. He even got asked how it felt. I was never asked how I felt the night it happened, but he was asked how he felt. And for some reason, his feelings were worth something. Mine didn't matter. It didn't matter. And it was like, for me, I don't want, the system is just archaic and it hasn't changed. The fact that they can still do this now is just, it just hasn't, I'm sure it's changed slightly since where it was, but the fact that you can sit in a court of law and do that is not, it's just, to me, it's unacceptable. It's not okay. And then the worst part, because I was told not to give more than was asked, not to do anything else, I expected the prosecution to cross-examine, to ask me why I went back to being friends. What did I get from that? What was my choice? Why would I do that? Because the jury have no idea. If it's not happened to them, they will not understand why you do it.
Yeah.
But I never got given that option. And I'm like, if I'd have known I wasn't going to be given that option, I would have answered every question very differently. I would have just been brutally honest. And even if it went against me, at least I got to say everything I wanted to say. But that's supposed to be taken from me. And it was just
that I agree. Even here, when they asked what happened, and I told them what I said, because number one, I didn't want it to happen, and number two, I didn't want him to think it was okay. And so, but they did not ask me either. And the fact that when a victim is abused, to come forward like that and then have to defend themselves, it is archaic, and it's unfortunately innocent until proven guilty. There's a fine line there, but it's about, I think, how much money you have to get the best lawyer, and even with that, there's still no chance. You see the things that they portray on television. You see the shows that they come out because people want to watch. They want to see this conflict. They want to see this, this challenge. And, Esther, when we're challenged, and depending on how you interpret it, how you bounce back, resilience is going to be the thing that's going to help you. And so you were through trauma. You were through a multidimensional trauma. And even this fresh one a few months ago with the court case. So be easy on yourself, be gentle, and just know that you can find healing. And I hear it in you that you want to advocate for other sexual assault victims. And so I have confidence that you're going to find a way to have that be a part of your life so that you can stand on your story, not in your story.
But I want to do it in such a way that I don't want to make my life about that. Does that make sense? Because it's like, I want to advocate, but I want that to be one part of my life.
As women, though, we have so much to offer, and in, for example, my experience of I wrote my book, Emotional Strength Explained, out of a story that was trauma. And growing up in a dysfunctional environment, I didn't have the tools I needed. So when I was asked, how did you turn out so well? I put it into this book, and a few months later, it was like, oh yeah, it's easy. This is what I do. And it serves me in so many ways of my life. So now I've moved on, and I do coaching. I'm a public speaker, and it's not as though that is who I am. It was what I went through, and so many of us in the world have gone through things, challenges, and different things, and so it is really the way that we bounce back. So again, I commend you for coming forward. I commend you for your strength, for your perseverance, and I just want to say that I'm curious to see when let's meet up a year from now. I want to see where you are. I know that you're going to do great things and make great strides.
I hope so. I don't know what they are. So if your listeners have any hints, any tips, any ways that I can figure out how to change one of the oldest legal systems in the world, then I'm all ears.
Yeah, and I met with somebody recently, Al B. Shore. He was a musician and a producer, I think, and he ended up needing a medical liver transplant last year. And in his journey, he realized that there was something in the system that wasn't right. It was going to potentially impact people because they could lose their lives if they had an implant because of this testing that wasn't supported. And so he created a nonprofit to work to change the laws and policies. And so, and he has different people like the Reverend Al Sharpton backing him, who is a major voice in that community. And it's just there's so much that can be done, but it's not easy. It's not easy to change it. And unfortunately, but I think telling our story, having these conversations, being there for one another, not making excuses, not making it okay, I think that this is definitely steps in the right direction.
Yeah, one conversation at a time.
That's right. That's right. Okay. Well, Esther, listen, I know that you've come forward with your bravery and your honesty, and I appreciate it. I know our listeners will. As I started, I think that you are truly a woman of strength and resilience. So remember that.
Thank you.
Thank you for being on my show, Resilient You with Alicia Pozsony, and we'll wish you all the best.
Thank you.